Yes. So for everyone that's on the call, this is our last session in our series. So we appreciate everyone coming today. And I want to say thank you to Stephanie. She's actually presenting from Florence, Italy. So she might be able to show us some sites, maybe not, but she's got a really cool thing behind her she'll tell us about.
Yep. I am. I am in a big flat in Italy overlooking the street, and it's really fabulous. And this was really the room with the best lighting. So I was going to try and give you the background of right Florence, but the lights I basically just become a dark shadow. So yeah, there's a bureau made out of wine barrels and boxes behind me. So that was our pre-show banter as we were chatting about that each in this flat that we're in, every room has a different theme, and this is the wine room. So please hold your wine and your drinking until after the program so that you can get the full benefit. And then as you reflect on this with a good glass of red, you can let me know where you land. As always, Stacy, thank you so much for the invitation. I so love the passion that you all have around practice management and the power and the potential that it has to unlock on the next level of success and growth and happiness for your advisors. So this topic, as we were kicking off, is a really important one. I know there's a couple of people joining. For anyone watching it later, and for all of you, really, the reason that we did these particular calls in succession is we want to make sure that we are following building blocks that we know work if followed consistently. So getting that clarity, a vision and business model and what we want to build and why, right, who the ideal client is. Those are things that really set us up for success. So go back, review that lesson. Right sizing your client base. I was telling Stacy, Michael Kitsis and I have a group of advisors. We work with a number of IFG advisors who are in the coaching program. And we went through right sizing as a group this year, and we just have story after story of the white knuckle moments and how hard it was going to be in terms of advisor transitions or pricing changes or even advisor transitions inside or even outside of the firm, lots of partial book sales, like things like that to free up time, energy, and capital. And it's the scariest thing because it's the equivalent of my asking you to go to the circus, go into the lion's cage, open its mouth, stick your head in, and go, no, it's going to be okay. And knock on wood and wine barrels. I will tell you what I tell every single advisor that has ever done a transition of any kind, and I've done hundreds, if not thousands of them, is no one has ever come to me on the other side when it's done strategically and intentionally and not said, that wasn't as nearly as big as a deal as I thought it was going to be. One, two, that was absolutely the linchpin that I needed to pull to free up. And every single time, one advisor just a couple of weeks ago said to me, she did a partial book sale and she goes, I came in the next day and I realized that all those little phone calls and the little this and the that, she goes, I realized I wouldn't be getting those anymore. She goes, and I was kind of like giddy and re-energized because now I get to double down on the service and the growth that I want to really focus my practice on going forward. So if you haven't watched those lessons, I really encourage you to go back because they are foundational to success, whether we're working with small firms, mid-sized firms, or mega firms. These are the same core principles that I used at Genworth, that we used at United, at Carson, right? And in many of the firms that you know, because they're proven to work time and time again. It's about applying an effective mindset and effective strategies. When we put those two things together, we can really create lift in our practice. When we have a clear vision and we've curated and optimized our client base so that it really aligns with our vision and goals, and we have the clarity of how we want to grow and why, that's where we can really start to see the growth momentum or the growth engine kick in and get really healthy easily if you're very effective and consistent double-digit growth to drive your practice. And that's really the conversation we want to have today, which is how can we drive growth in a consistent, effective, and reliable way? So I want to have that conversation. And I was telling Stacy as we kicked off, firms come to us all the time and say, hey, I want to grow, I want to double, I want to do X, Y, or Z. And we start with vision and clarity, curating the client base, making sure, right, that the leverage and the business model is right. Because as Michael and I just told a very large group of advisors, You cannot grow your way out of pricing, profitability, or people problems. If you're working with the wrong clients for the wrong fees, or you have the wrong team model, those three things will kill your ability to deliver value. It'll kill your time, it'll kill your capacity, and it will kill your margins every single time. So we want you to resolve those issues and put yourself in a place to grow efficiently and effectively. And if you do that, you'll find the growth engine will be a lot easier. So we're gonna really dive into that. So I'm gonna cover a lot because we have an hour. And just a reminder, we'll record this. It will be posted on the website with a lot of the resources that we go over, so you can go back when you have more time, thoughtfully go through it and start to apply the lessons and the best practices that I'm going to share with you today. Stacy, let me know that you had Mary Kate come and talk about marketing. So some of this is probably going to be really familiar because she knows her stuff when it comes to marketing, and best practices are best practices. What I want to talk to you today about is a strategy for a simple structure that, if you follow it, is proven to work at growing practices. Literally that simple, Stacy. If you work the plan will work. The problem is, for the most part, said with all the love in my heart, most of you don't have a plan. So firms, according to a study that PricewaterhouseCoopers did, firms with an intentional growth strategy grow 40% more than firms that don't, even top marketers or top performers. So one of the things we talk about a lot when we talk about marketing and coaching is how much mindset is really a fundamental issue. Equally important, time and attention. We have the best of intentions, but if we're honest, there are a number of challenges that get in between us and the kind of growth engine that we want. I like to call them the seven dwarves of marketing. You may be familiar with the seven dwarves. These are their distant second cousins. Flashy, cheapy, busy, bouncy, grabby, greedy, and dowdy. You can read the descriptions, but what you will notice is that you will have one, if not multiple, characteristics of these marketing dwarves. You might be the person. I literally had someone call me once. I cannot make this up. No joke. Here was what he said to me, Stacy. I really need your help growing. I said, okay, what's the situation? He said, well, I tried this and I tried this and I tried this. No joke. It was like webinars, emails, seminars, something, right? It's like 10, 15 years ago. And he said, nothing's worked. I'm down to my last $5,000. I need you to tell me what will work. And I said, ooh, that would have been like a while ago, right? I am not the $5,000. I said, let me tell you what will work. Doing any one of those things consistently. But Flashy likes to show up, throw some money at something, and then wonder why it didn't get results when it happens once. So we have this concept we call laying the tracks. If I'm going to go from California to New York, I need to lay those tracks, right? I have to put the components in place, which we're going to talk about today. But then what happens is, when it doesn't work immediately, said again with all love and respect, we go, oh, marketing doesn't work. It's stupid. I don't want to waste any more time or money. I'm just going to go back to my old habits. I'm going to chalk it up to this stuff just doesn't work, and it'll be what it'll be. And the problem with that is, A, it's not true. All marketing works. I have seen everything from seminars to blogs, and we've done studies and research. The top things that work are on the list of the things that don't. There's no one right or wrong strategy, which we'll talk about. There is right or wrong execution. So I'm not going to read all of these in the interest of time, but I want you to just take a second and look at them and ask yourself if any of those habits or attitudes are present in your growth or your marketing on a consistent basis, right? Are we chasing shiny objects all the time? Are we saying, I'm going to start, I have a client, she's wonderful, right? She's like, I had a blog and it worked great. And then I stopped. And I was like, don't feel bad. That happens all of the time. Something really works. So we get busy and we stop doing it. I call it yo-yo marketing. When urgency of, right, we apply energy and time because urgency of an empty pipeline, and then we get two or three prospects and we get distracted, we start onboarding, and then the pipeline dries up, and then we have to start all over again, right? So a lot of these habits and attitudes are what slow us down, but we ultimately still need to build a strategy and a structure for what I like to call a growth engine. Now, to me, a growth engine isn't sales, it isn't marketing, it isn't your funnel, it isn't your ideal client or your website. It is all of those components. in the growth car, if you will, or the engine. And the way that I'll define that engine is a steady pipeline of high quality clients with a 70% or better conversion rate that meets your growth goals. Now, typically, we'll have growth goals in the 15 or greater percent, right? So double digit growth goals. Most of you are growing 9 to 15% on average, just between market share of wallet, clients, referrals, things along that. So our goal is to build a growth engine that has all of the components. This does not mean you need to build a $1 billion mega firm. Simple is actually better. Simple is the ultimate sophistication. But what we want to do is make sure we have each of the components. Have we covered our marketing mindset? Do we recognize that investment precedes return, time, energy, and capital? Right? So we have to invest consistently over and over again if we want to get a consistent and steady pipeline, right? So we can't be one of those 7 dwarfs. So we're going to talk about putting a structure in place to solve for that. As we talked about in our first call, ideally we have a differentiator. That is a huge driver of growth. A niche, for example, is a differentiator. Niche firms, specialty firms grow 2 to 3 times faster because they can create a gravity around their marketing. They can deliver deeper value more efficiently. They can build their teams and their tech around a certain set of clients and needs. So with a differentiator, there are 5 basic differentiators. We talked about those in the first call. Niche is one of them, pricing strategy, technical specialty, right? A couple of others. And then once you have, right, a good attitude and expectation around marketing, you're willing to show up consistently. You've gotten clear on what your differentiator or positioning is. If you're doing clients who are retirees, which is what we're going to call a general niche, that differentiator in the ideal becomes a more branded client experience and process, right? Because you have to compete with everyone else who's approaching retirees. So we just did a brand and a website for a client in our leaders program, and we created a brand called your retirement CRO, your chief retirement officer. I could not believe that it had no one else had come up with it or trademarked it, so we did. Right. And then we created a name for the company, the retirement suite, like doors, and you get access to the CRO, right? So his target audience in retirees kind of narrowed that down to self-made investors, right? So it's just a comment and a theme, but it really, really works. So the idea is, can you create differentiation and really identify a client avatar to market to? Going back to mindset, it will be the most difficult mental hurdle. It's also the thing that will create the greatest marketing momentum. Once you've done that, you are now in a position to build a really effective, albeit simple, that's the important part. If you haven't done those things, you have to do a lot more complexity and a lot more activity and a lot more cost and a lot more investment of time. If you get really clear and keep it really focused, you can start to build out your marketing action plan. So I want to make a really quick case here for investing in marketing, not just time, but actual dollars. The average firm spends 1 to 3% on marketing. Top firms spend often 3 to 7% on marketing, and their growth reflects that. So here's the business case. A $10,000 a year client on average will generate $10,000 a year in revenue. The average tenure is 20 years, depending on when you retain them, but that's sort of an industry average. If you think about that over 20 years, that's $200,000, not including any referrals. At a 50 or 60% margin, which you should easily be at it as a solo, right? If you're a little bit larger, you should be able to pay yourself, your advisor team, and still have a 25 to 35% margin. Which would put you at a 50 or 60% EBOC. But essentially, right, your margin on that client is going to be 100 to 120,000 over the course of that. So that $10,000 client is going to make you $200,000, which you're going to keep 100 to 120,000 dollars of, and then you're going to monetize that value when you sell at probably around 3 times revenue, depending on where the market is at that given time. The case that I'm making here is when we have conversations with firms about investing in marketing, they get very reluctant because it's not something we've typically done. We've typically shown up, shook hands, been a good human for a while, and gotten business. So there's a lot of data that talks about how referrals are on the decline, right? They've gone from like 9% to 3% of growth over the last decade because you have digital marketing interfering in that referral loop. I don't need to call my CPA or my best friend because the person who works with business coaches has been freaking following me on email, a blog, and social media for 2 years. I know who to reach out to right in my target market, whether I'm an optometrist or a retiree. The odds are that I have an information source that's not only available to me, that someone has tried to outreach to me and bring me into that network, right, to build that trust equity and make me a prospect. So yes, traditional marketing works. We love being brilliant at the basics, but you're still going to want to make a clear investment of time, energy, and capital. If you're going to do COI lunches, you need to really think about the structure for that, which we'll talk about. And then ask yourself, right, how many lunches do I need to do if I do 2 a year, right? If I meet with my COIs twice in person, whether it's coffee or Zoom or whatever it is, I'll send them lunch with a Uber Eats gift card. Like, what's the budget for that in terms of time and capital? And so we tend to just kind of shoot from the hip and go, what feels good this week? And that works. That's the issue. It's not a bad strategy. It's effective. It's just not the most effective strategy. And that's the shift that we ultimately want to make, is that there is a business case for investing intentionally and consistently time, energy, and capital. If we do that, what we know is we will grow, because when we do it, that's what happens every single time. So here's what we'll call your marketing action playbook. So as we talked about, you're going to define your goals. What is it you want to grow and why? So we tend to, when we do coaching, Stacey and I were talking about this, I will go into very successful firms that are growing or really big firms, and I'll be like, okay, what is the goal? And they'll be like 15% growth. And I'll be like, why? Because that's what we've done. And I'm like, okay, and why? Are we driving growth for succession? Are we driving growth for reach and impact? Are we driving growth to improve scale and margins and build for value? Are we driving growth because you've just been doing this for 40 years and you don't know what else to do with your time, which happens, by the way? So sometimes there's a really clear answer. Sometimes it actually requires some pause and some reflection, especially if you go through vision and right sizing, right? And you get really clear about that ideal audience. What we're talking about today is choosing your channels. How am I going to reach the people so that they can know me ultimately, right? Engage with me and then trust me. And then how do we build a plan around that so that we can apply energy, time, and capital consistently in the ways that work? Then you're going to schedule your launch, right? You're going to do these things, which means you have to go back to the taking back your time lesson and make sure that you are in charge of your time and calendar. If you're not, you're going to go back to that yo-yo marketing and you might apply some of this. So again, remember, get brilliant at the basics and build from there. Then you're going to want to manage your plan. 1, by taking action. 2, by accountability. Do you are you keeping track of your performance, or do you have, a productivity app? Do you have a buddy inside the firm? Is that time on your calendar? Are you tracking your results? So we'll talk a little bit more about those pieces, but I really want to dive into choosing your channel and creating your plan so that you're clear about how to set your strategy and then how to bring a structure to it. As I mentioned, we tend to do this shoot from the hip, what I like to call spaghetti marketing. So Stacey, it's really appropriate because I'm literally in Florence, and the second that this is over, I'm taking the girls out. We're going to go have some Italian dinner. Spaghetti is amazing, but it's just a bowl of stuff kind of all globbed together, no real rhyme or reason to it, right? And that's kind of the average advisor's marketing plan. We kind of get up, we throw whatever at the wall, or we respond to whatever comes to us, which is wildly different than a bento box, right? If you've ever had Japanese, everything in some nice, neat little compartment. My brain loves that. It's like very tidy, right? And the difference is there's order, there's organization, there's intention. Again, it doesn't mean that spaghetti marketing or yo-yo marketing doesn't work, but it will not create a growth engine that gets into a groove. And I have advisors who come to me with this, I want to create a growth engine, and we go back to the beginning, and then we go through the process, and we get to the point where I am not kidding to you. They say to me, it almost feels like cheating. Now that I've laid the tracks, right, and then refine the tracks, which is what we're going to talk about, right, going back over and making sure you're optimizing each piece of your marketing. It's literally like going up to a slot machine in Vegas and pulling the slot and knowing you're going to win. If I do this, I know what's going to happen. That doesn't happen overnight. It's what I call a 3-year runway. And there's a variation in that, but in general, once you get really clear about who you want to serve, how you want to grow, and how you're going to, right, the channels you're going to pursue, you can build that growth engine, what we call the runway, in 2 or 3 years. If you do it really effectively, you can expedite it or accelerate it a bit. And if you don't do it as effectively or consistently, it might take you a little bit longer. But the point is, if you think about the fact that we're going to go from spaghetti to bento box, it means that we ultimately have to create some structure. So as we've talked about, first step is the clearer you are about the client that you're marketing to, the more effective your marketing will be. This is not theory that I am pontificating. This is proven fact, because your gravity becomes stronger. So, right, we take our 30-day summer vacay. Every year we go someplace different in the world: Turkey, Greece, Egypt. We're in Europe and Croatia this year. And I'll never forget when we were in Turkey. We don't typically do tours, but it was a lot of rocks and dirt, but there was a lot of history. So I was like, we should definitely do the tour. And we come into this square. And if you've ever done those tours or seen them, you see everyone, the guides with the telescoping poles, right, Stacey, and the yellow flag and the green flag and the red flag. But here was the problem. We had a yellow, or we were a yellow group. There were a lot of yellow flags. So 10, 15 years ago, being a fiduciary or being a fee, like that was all, not so much anymore. And post-COVID, it's a very digital world, which means people can get clients anywhere and everywhere, and they're marketing to them, right? So you're not competing with Bob next door, you're competing with every advisor in the country. It goes back to that differentiation. But let me tell you, our tour guide, he's a very effective marketer, because at the top of his telescoping pole, Stacy, was a yellow inflatable banana. Now, when I looked at across and I saw red and green and yellow, but I saw the banana, I was like, that's my guy, gotta go right there. That's the kind of gravity having a differentiated ideal client makes. So retirees within 5 years of clients is a good start, but you're at the top of the generalization, right? Retirees who are self-made investors, better. That's what we did with the chief retirement officer, right? Retirees within a profession, right? Or something more specific, small business owners or female C-suites in tech, right? The more specific, think the sharper the knife will be. So good marketing is like a sharp knife, Stacey. If you've anyone ever tried to cut a tomato, I'm in Italy, so we're really going with the themes. Now, I love to cook, right? We learned how to make pasta in Bologna. We flew here in February. Our whole family took a pasta making class. I had to cut tomatoes. If you cut a tomato, this would not happen in class because the tomato was the knife was very sharp. But at home, you grab a knife, right? You go to cut the tomato and you kind of got to squish it. It's messy and you got to poke it, right? And every time you're like, oh, why can't this just be easier? That's kind of how our marketing feels. And then you get a really sharp knife every once in a while. You take a class in Italy, give you sharp knives, and you cut it. And you know that like effortless feeling where you just like it just whoosh, you're like, yes, that's how it's supposed to be. That's what having a really differentiated position is like in your marketing. So niche is the easiest and most common one. Technical specialties, pricing models, market position, the biggest firm, tiny little boutique with a specialty, right? But we need a differentiated position. So if it's retirees, we're going to double down on the brand, right? So the more general your audience or niche, the more you're going to want to invest in differentiated brands so that you stand out from everyone else who is marketing to that audience. The good news is not that many people do that effectively. So yes, there's competition, but there are very few firms who really execute well and consistently. So again, have that target client. There are resources from prior calls. We'll make sure those are posted in the marketing lesson as well. The reason that this matters, Stacey, and I really want to double down on this point, is if I told you that I had a client with $300 million. He was 72. He was British. He had complex heir and estate issues. On paper, I just described both Ozzy Osbourne and King Charles. They're not the same person from a marketing perspective. How I talk to them, the imagery, right? The kind of service I provide is going to be really different. So this tends to be one of those things that we're like, yeah, it's not that big a deal. It really is, because it's what's going to really amplify and accelerate your marketing. Because the number one thing you need to do, I'm going to show you the formula, but one of those things in the formula is you have to build credibility. You can do it by proving how smart you are. It's just really slow. So you could write a lot of technical articles and that will get you there. But if people believe that you see them, hear them, and understand them, their brains are like, Chris is in, Chance is in. Like, yes, I have something to connect and engage with them around. And then that's where your funnel and your conversion and your website come in, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I want you to get really clear about why we want to grow, who we want to grow with. And then what we want to get really clear on is we're not trying to invent some version of ourselves that doesn't exist. A lot of what stops us is we get hangups in our head about I'm not good at that, or I don't like that, or I don't want to spend money, before we ever fully engage with evaluating what kind of marketing we can do that will work for us. So I'm just going to give you permission to just do you, because there is somebody out there with their banana freak flag looking for you. I have clients who are foreigners with thick accents who work with people like them, and it works great for them. It would not work great for Chris. Just wouldn't work. Right. Unless Chris happened to be in that audience. So the goal there is, right, or have a reason to be. So the goal is not to try and be something that we're not. The goal is to follow a formula that works. One, be consistent. Most of what we do in marketing is not consistently done. If we do things consistently, then we can tweak them, refine them, and optimize them until they really deliver. But when we're inconsistent, we never get that chance or ability. Two, as I mentioned, we have to be credible. I see you, I hear you, I understand you. Has to come through emotionally and technically, going back to that vision and ideal client work we talked about earlier this year. Third component, this is all research backed, you need to be value focused. Are you delivering real value, not selling, not making offers, time and time again, however you happen to be doing it? That will generate consistent lead flow. The marketing formula, if you really want to know what it is behind the scenes, is you divide those top three by right number of self promotions in your marketing, whether it's having conversations with clients about referrals or COIs or a blog or a webinar or a podcast, whatever it may be, you are and should intentionally seed offers and opportunities to engage with you, but that ratio needs to be right? We can't be selling all the time and delivering a little bit of value. So it's why you have those calls to offer or downloads on your website, right? We're delivering a lot of information and value in exchange for an email. So that's essentially the formula. You're going to notice, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a complicated formula. You don't have to go to Harvard for this. You have to do the hard work of mastering your mindset, because that almost always comes up in clarity, strategy, getting control of your time and calendar to be consistent, right? And not be one of the seven dwarves. And then it requires the methods. What am I actually going to do consistently to get the results that Stephanie assures me that I can get? So one, we start to get a little freaked out about what am I going to do and is it going to work? And I'm here to tell you it's so much simpler than we think it is. Everything that's old is new again. That's it. Networking is social media. Speaking is still speaking. And now instead of seminars, we have webinars, which you can do. You have meetings and now you have Zooms, right? Everybody freaked out when we had to prospect nationally after Zoom, and everybody adjusted in like 90 days. What used to be print publications and newsletters or blogs and online, right? Direct mail is now email, cold call is SEO and search. So every avenue or medium worked, and there's now a digital modern version of that medium that you can also take advantage of. So it doesn't have to be an or proposition, it can be a combination. But what we always want you to encourage you to do is get brilliant at the basics first, right? We don't want to go from zero to I'm going to be the world's greatest podcaster if we don't have a referral strategy, right, and we're not intentionally following our marketing plan. So step one is we're going to choose our channels. Very few advisors sit down and think about the ways that they can reach their audience. Step one would be knowing who your audience is, which makes it an awful lot easier. In the absence of that, it's going to be a much more general exercise. But with a specific client, even if it's retirees, right? Or let's just say it's optometrists who are retiring, right? Or architects, we know how to engage, or we can quickly find out how to engage in each of these areas, right? So you've got your general outreach, which is your brand story and messaging. It's going to show up on your website, for example. Your prospect outreach, things like Google Ads, lead gen, paid solicitors, right? Smart asset, things like that, cold calling, which some people still do and still works. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying everything that's ever worked still does if you apply it consistently and you follow the rules that make it work. Content, obviously huge these days, articles, blogs, white paper with ChatGPT, AI, and a lot of the content platforms. There's a ton. What used to take weeks to create, you can now create in a day. You still need to personalize it. You need to add your voice and specialty, but it's become a huge accelerant for really building content credibility. You've got your personal channels. You're all very familiar with those, right? Speaking, client referrals, COIs. And then you've got those digital channels, which are growing in popularity. As I mentioned, referrals are on the decline because these channels are intervening. I don't need to call my CPA. There's a podcast, a webinar, a YouTube, or something that I've seen somewhere online that I'm as likely to go find out about now. And the younger you go in the demographic, 66% of people under 50 find refer advisors online, and they do it, by the way. The most successful conversions happen when there are 3 or more digital touch points. So obviously client referrals tend to have a higher conversion rate, but when you have 3 or more digital touch points, right? They read your blog, they went to your website and got a download, they got a nurture email campaign from you, they're far more likely to convert. We see those conversion numbers go up, which is why we like to build those campaigns. Again, get brilliant at the basics first, but we want you to know these options are all available to you. What I will tell you is all of these strategies work. Some of them will make your skin crawl. Some of them you'll think are the sexiest thing ever, and they'll make somebody else's skin crawl. To the earlier point, that is not my concern. My concern is that you pick the 1 or 2 that are going to really work for you and you double down and focus. All strategies can work, but you just can't work all strategies. So we tend to get really excited and go, oh, I'm going to market, I'm going to do this. Like going to the buffet really hungry, or the grocery store. Worst time to go to the grocery store is when you're really hungry because everything ends up in the cart. That's not what we want to do here. So we want to go around this wheel essentially as we're building out our marketing plan. And we want to get really clear on a few questions, and there's something funky going on with my slide here. Question number 1, how important is growth to you? So we can say that growth is important, but if we really mean it, we're going to show up in a different way: time, energy, capital, commitment. So we want, hey, I'd like to grow is very different than I'm really seriously committed to a 28% growth rate because that's what's going to put me on track for my goals. Russell's like, hey, team, this is what we're going to do. What's it going to take? How are we going to get there? Right? If you know what the goals are that support the vision, then you can ask yourself what strategies are going to best support those goals. Michelle, if you're like, I love talking to people, but I hate being on video, we might be like blogs, podcasts, right? Lots of things we can do there, not to mention, right, referrals, COIs, etc. What do you want to do? What do you like to do? If you're good at writing and you love doing it, we're going to go that direction. If you hate public speaking, I'm not going to force you to start on a stage. That's going to be very counter to our efforts. So what we want to do is follow a very simple formula that works. So again, here are those questions in a format you can actually read. We're going to share this marketing plan resource with you, so it'll be in the library after this call. Some basic questions. Let's go back. Sorry, I clicked too fast. I'm trying to see you and my screen at the same time. Doesn't always work. So these basic questions are, this marketing plan playbook is going to walk you through building a simple marketing strategy and structure that will work. So how many hours a week? You can't put 6 minutes and expect it to work, but reasonably, how much time can you invest? Remember, top firms spend about, or average advisors spend about 10% of their time on marketing. Top growth advisors spend about 30% of their time on marketing. If you can't spend that much time, what can you commit to consistently? If it's 2 to 3 hours a week, Michelle, then make it 2 to 3 hours a week, right? I would much rather you spend an hour a week consistently and build from there, because that creates momentum. The flywheel starts turning, the formula starts to work. We can commit and invest more time. If our goals are really big, then we need to make bigger investments, and we need the commitment to follow through on those so that we have the opportunity to hit those goals. So what's your people budget? Are you going to apply some of your team's time? Are you going to bring in outside resources? Are you going to budget, 1 day a month to sit down and work on your content or your podcast or whatever it might be? And how much money are you willing to invest? So again, most firms spend 1 to 3%. Top firms tend to spend 3 to 7%. Remember, they're trying to invest in growth, because every dollar that they get is a 200-fold return on that investment. The reason that firms are, right, PE firms and all this venture money is out there paying a 50% greater premium than they did 5 to 10 years ago, is because they have figured out about recurring revenue, right, and high retention rates. And so there's a lot of economics in this particular profession, but we have a hesitancy to actually invest in that growth. So firms with a growth strategy that invest in growth tend to grow at 2 to 3 times the rate of firms that don't, which makes perfect sense, right? So the question isn't why aren't we growing? The question is, what choices have and commitments have we made that have kept us from growing, right? Or what habits or conditioned thinking have kept us from making those commitments to actually grow. Then you're going to go through an exercise to actually calculate your revenue gap. If this is my goals and this is how much I'm growing, these are the number of new clients I'm going to need, so that you're really clear. One of the things that happens is our brain sees big, squishy. It doesn't understand specifics, so it just tells us to do all this stuff later. And we go into those procrastination, or I can't, I'll deal with it. When we get really clear, often, Michelle, Megan, it's not that big a deal. Like, oh, I only need 8 clients a year for the next 3 years to hit my goal. I'm getting 5 clients a year now. Could I go from 5 to 8? Yeah, that doesn't sound earth shattering, right? Now, if you're trying to go from 5 to 25, obviously that's going to be a bigger lift, and you're going to need to make bigger investments and commitments. So step 1 is just getting really clear on what you want, so that you can figure out what the gap is, so that you understand what's it really going to take to get there. This is not pie in the sky. We need to be realistic about our current growth rate, what we're willing to invest, the kind of growth we want to create, and what it's really going to take over what period of time. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to set those growth goals. So, right, everyone's a big fan of SMART goals. Our goal is to do that very specifically. What are the performance targets that you ultimately want to hit? If you want to bring in 10 clients a year at $10,000 each, that's very different than if you want to bring in 25 clients at $5,000 each, right? So it's about what is the target market and what are the goals that we need to hit our revenue goals. You might say things like, I want to build 5 COI relationships that refer 3 times per year. By the way, if you do that, that's 15 referrals a year. For most people, that will get you a pretty long way to good growth goals. If you get 5 of those relationships that refer 5 times a year, you have 25 referrals a year. So for some advisors who are great with COIs, we're like, what if we just showed up, crushed it, delivered deep value, put these COIs on a service model, think just like clients, and wowed the heck out of them and their clients, so that between them, the clients they referred, and the referrals that we got from them, we got at least 5 a year. What would that do to our growth? And most of the time, if you map that out, it's pretty significant. If we doubled the number of client referrals, right? If we're getting X without trying, what would happen if we had some intentional referral strategies? All the data shows that firms with intentional referral strategies get significantly more and better referrals than firms that don't. What if we're going into this digital zone and we don't know if we're going to crush it? We're going to do all the standard stuff, right? Steph says, be brilliant at the basics. And we're going to start that blog, that webinar, that podcast, whatever it might be. So we can do these near-term strategies that we know will generate leads. Smart Asset will generate leads. Calling COIs consistently will generate leads. What we also want to do is build that runway for anything adding to that growth engine. If we're going to do those digital, modern, scalable strategies, those take time. That 3-year runway kicks in. If you're starting a blog, a seminar, a webinar, a podcast, the goal is to lay the tracks in year 1, go through and create all these pieces, which we'll talk about. Year 2 and 3, you're refining. You're going back, you're watching the data from the podcast to the website through the sales process all the way through, and you're going to refine and optimize each section of that track until you get it where you want it. That usually takes about 3 years if you're really consistent and you're applying good strategies. You can accelerate that, honestly, with outside partners and resources. And you can decelerate that by not doing the right things or not doing it consistently. So one of our most successful advisors always jokes, sorry, I'm falling off my chair. One of our most successful advisors jokes that it was a 5-year process for him because he did not know what to do with his podcast for the first 2 years. And then he joined Limitless and we helped him sort it out. And then it took him about 3 years. And literally he called me one day and he said, I think I'm going to give up my podcast. I just don't think it's working. And we went through the data. The trends were up, which is what we're looking for in any strategy. Not that it's the sky's going to part and you're going to get 50 people. What we're looking for are the trend lines up. The trend lines aren't up, it means the content or the audience reach isn't working. As long as the trend line's up, it means we're resonating. We just have to create more reach. So we did some refining of the track, if you will, some basic strategies and principles. And now his podcast is literally his #1 source of leads, and it's 40% plus growth a year. So just about the time we want to give up is really about the time that things work. But what's important is that we get really clear and consistent about what we want to do. And in this case, why we want to do it in terms of how it's additive to the goals, right? We want to double down on the basics, really making sure we're working on clients' share of wallet referrals, COIs, if that's part of your strategy. And then getting really clear about if and when we're going to do more of those scalable, modern digital growth strategies and when and how we're going to make those investments. So the playbook will actually walk you through each section on the channel, and it will give you ideas, right? It'll ask you questions, and then it actually gives you ideas for things to do, because I know that the hardest thing to do is to create something from scratch. So we try to make it as easy as possible as we can for our advisors. So again, this is not going to solve for every little detail, but it will give you an idea of some of the ideas or strategies that you can use really to help you get a plan going and make sure you're getting that momentum started in each of the areas that you choose to include. Here's an example of how you can take a target client or audience, go around the wheel, and use it as a framework. So establish your target client, retiree in my area who worked with a major employer. They want a secure retirement, family time, focus to live, website, right? Retirees ready to follow what sparks joy, clear space, speaking to employer as a subspecialty. We did social media campaigns around that employer. We did a monthly retirement ready newsletter around that employer. We did a podcast for retirees. We did employer specific editions. He did passion prospecting, flying community company events, invited people from those companies, centers of influence, obviously HR managers, CPAs in the area, etc. And then twice a year did 5 retirement mistakes not to make with your quote employer's retirement plan, right? So notice there's nothing there that's wildly difficult, complicated, or even expensive. Not massively time consuming, but it is a consistent investment of time and thought capital, right? We've got to create a little content. We have to show up consistently. We got to build those COI relationships. We have to start investing in those workshops and webinars, going to do some lead gen and some nurture email, right? We got to build the list and manage the list and kind of create a funnel around that, right? That's going to be our modern exploratory growth marketing. We don't expect to nail that in the next 12 months, but we kind of figure out we need to maybe start moving in that direction if we want to drive a steady growth engine that isn't dependent on one single person, which as you start to think about practices and growth and transition creates succession issues, or just as we get more successful, we don't want everything to be as dependent on us. So again, make sure you focus on being brilliant at the basics first, and then think about layering in those modern digital kind of scalable strategies as your time, energy, and capital allows. so that you can invest in something like that. If you want to drive more growth over time that's less dependent on you, can start investing in that when it makes sense for you. So here's an overview of the playbook, right? Again, you're going to go through the marketing channels, set your goals, make sure you're clear on what it's really going to take so you can have an honest conversation with yourself about the time, energy, capital, and commitment required, and what level are you ready to invest. You're then going to go through, build the playbook, choose your channels, and then that's going to take you to this form, which essentially will help you build out a marketing schedule. One page, essentially, you can use it by month or quarter, and so it just keeps it very, very simple for you. But the idea is not to let your eyes be bigger than your stomach. When we're interested in marketing, we tend to go into, I call it shiny crow mode. I want that, I want that, I want that. I'm going to bring it all back to the nest. But as a result, we have too much on our plate. We get distracted and overwhelmed, and we don't know how to execute on most of it anyway. So that ability to focus and figure it out gets really diluted, and we end up not doing much of anything, or we go back to the yo-yo marketing, and then we get frustrated and we say that marketing doesn't work, and we just give up and go back to whatever we were doing. So rule number one is don't go into the hungry buffet. Like, that's why we want to do the gap analysis. We want to get really clear on the goals. What is it really going to take? Let's do it in stages. Let's get brilliant at the basics. What are we doing for share of wallet? Do we have a good service model in place? Do we have one of our leaders clients, our 7-figure and larger firms. I was just telling Stacey, we were just going through these exercises this year, and he just did a share of wallet campaign, just went back to clients, talked to them, checked in about different things because they've grown so much, and they did like a 40% lift just from going back. Now, he's not going to do that every year, and he probably won't ever do that again because they have a really special but structured service model in place now so that those opportunities aren't lost. But when was the last time you went back through clients and looked at all the opportunities or things that may have missed, or are clients aware of all the services that we offer? Right. So we want to look at share of wallet and services. We want to look at making sure we're delivering deep value. We want to look at client referral strategies and conversations and scripts and structures. We want to look at centers of influence, if that's part of what your practice growth is coming from, which it is for many of you. And then we want to look at those additional additive, right, digital strategies if we want to create greater lift, right? And we've got the time and the runway to do that. It's not a race against the clock. Just being on purpose and intentional will get you so much farther in 3 years than you actually think. So using that structure, here's an actual plan that we built. And I picked this one because it is so simple. I am not trying to impress you with our ability to build, right, big complicated marketing plans. We can, and we have, and we stop doing them because they don't work, because nobody follows them, right? So whether we're doing firm level marketing, advisor level marketing, or both, you want to basically build a simple, clear plan, right? So here's an example, right? We've got inbound marketing. We're going to set up our website. We're going to do retiring into your practice. We're going to find one guest blogger a month. Like, that's pretty executable. We're going to join the Architects International Association. We're going to attend chapter meetings. We're going to find a committee to join, right? We're going to start building that referral network. We're going to establish our credibility. Here's how we're going to do that. We're going to build awareness. We're going to build thought lead, right? So you can go around that wheel. This is where having an ideal client or a niche is really helpful, because you'll notice it gets a lot easier to hone in. Again, if you don't have that, you're going to want to focus more on a brand position or one of the other differentiators. But as you can see, as you get really clear on the channel and the audience, there are only so many, right, hours in a day, month, and quarter. If you break it down by quarter, and then you can use this plan here, and you can turn that into a 30-day calendar so that you have an annual plan, a quarterly plan, and then a 30-day calendar for each advisor. So the firm, on average in my world, should be doing 70% of the marketing on a systematized basis, where we have referral thank you processes, we have COI campaigns, we have the website and the sales process and nurture funnels, we've got branding and PR, right? Whatever we're doing in the community. And then each advisor in the firm, if you have a multiple advisor firm, service advisor should have share of wallet, referral, and COI campaigns. They can be growing that way. Comp plan should be organized to align with that. One of the biggest mistakes firms make firms make is they don't align compensation with service advisors to drive around growth. They align compensation plans for rainmakers when service advisors can grow, right, a client base 20 to 40%, right, using those strategies we talked about. So that's why we want to get brilliant at the basics, and we want to build a plan at the firm level. So I like to see about 70% of the marketing done on a firm, systematized, structured basis, right? Highly leverageable. We're writing a blog, it goes out to 1,000 people, it took the same amount of time. And about 30% of our marketing specialized, highly personal, right? We're going to do the webinar, and then we're going to follow up with one-on-one calls, right? We're going to do really great nurture marketing to our COIs with these automated campaigns. We're going to show up twice a year for one-on-one meetings, and we're going to do a really cool event once a year that we invite all our COIs to that they really love to come to, right? Like those kinds of things are, right? They've been around forever, but they work consistently, and then we can layer the other things on top of them. So the client is the North Star because it makes marketing an awful lot easier. So structurally, what you're going to do is recognize, and it's almost too simple, but I like to say that the secret to marketing success, to driving steady double-digit growth, is actually on the back of your shampoo bottle. You're all going to go home tonight, right? If you're not already home, when you go in your bathroom, you're going to pick up your shampoo bottle. You're going to read the back. It's going to say directions. And it's going to say, no joke, apply a small concentrated amount, lather, rinse, repeat. That is the secret to marketing success. Not being dopey, sneezy, bouncy, grumpy, chasey, none of those things. It is about getting clear on how much you want to grow and why, and making sure that why has merit to you, because the motivation needs to be there, or you simply aren't going to do it. Something has to change. That commitment has to have a catalyst, and that catalyst is your motivator for growth. So if you're not clear on that, if it's just I want to grow another 15%, or I want to hit 1 billion because that's the cool goal. It used to be 100 million, now it's 1 billion. Like that's great. But if you don't know why you're doing it, oftentimes you will grow for growth's sake. In many cases, you will not be happy, even if you're successful. It doesn't mean you can't be, right? But we have clients all the time. We just had one of our leaders who was like, I thought I wanted $1 billion firm because I want to make this to support my lifestyle. And he was like, but you just showed me I can build like a $700 million firm or a $500 million firm and make just as much money. And I was like, yeah. So if you want to be 1 billion, that's fabulous, but you don't have to be there to get this other thing. So that goes back to the vision and goals piece. What are you really architecting and why? Who is the client you want to serve? What's the brand positioning, the differentiator, so that we know how to reach them in the marketplace? What is your yellow freak banana flag? You got to let that freak flag fly. It is the thing you're most reluctant to do, but it is the thing that will actually work. If you show up with your yellow banana freak flag every day, over and over and over, people will go, Michelle gets me, Megan gets me, Chris gets me, Chance gets me. That's the person I want to be my advisor. So we need to make a time commitment. We need to add it to our schedule, our calendar, our budget. All boring. Boring is beautiful because boring is what makes for really, really good marketing. You're going to build your action plan. You're going to set your actions. If you've got a team, you are going to make this part of the cultural accountability, right? What are we going to make sure we're doing? And then you're going to put tracking in place. You want to track everything from your website, your Google Analytics, etc., your SEO data, your referral data, your COI data, all your sales process data, because that's how you're going to optimize, right? You want baseline data across each area. You're not going to judge it. It's not going to be stellar to start, but it's going to get better and better and better. And within 2 to 3 years, you're going to have a marketing machine that's really starting to hum, and you're going to feel it. And then you're going to hit that tipping point where you're going to refine and it's going to really start to work. And that's when things get really good. You're going to call me and be like, what do I do? And I'll be like, we're going to have to start a waiting list. We're going to have to raise your minimums, right? We're going to create a series of high quality problems. So it's at one point, it's about strategy. What are we going to do and why are we doing that? The second is structure. If we don't show up and do very simple but very effective strategies that work consistently, we are simply diluting every investment we're making. Doesn't mean it won't still work. It means it's dilutive, which is why, again, I'd rather have an hour a week consistently than we build on then you're telling me it's going to be an hour a day and you're not really going to commit and you're going to stop in 3 weeks and we're going to be back to square one. So it's really about the level of commitment you're really going to make to growth. All of the marketing that we're going to talk about these days is at some level going to require content, referral scripts for clients. You've got our referral roadmap, lots of those script examples. If you're doing content, if you got downloads on your website, the good news is AI makes that all a lot better. There are great firms and resources out there. You're going to want to update your prospect process, right? To make sure we've got that 70% or better conversion rate. And then you are going to make marketing a real job. So Michelle, if you're the chief growth officer of your firm, which most of you are, we have to put that on the calendar and we have to show up. We actually have to do that job consistently. If you have a clear strategy and a simple plan that you believe is possible to execute, your odds go up exponentially. Outside of that, the odds are stacked against you 9-1 that you will listen to this phone call and be like, that is great information, and do absolutely nothing with it. 9-1. So it is about taking action that tells your brain this time is different. Let's change the cadence and let's make sure we put a structure in place so that strategy that we define, which is simple and strategic, we can show up and do that consistently. If we do that, we're going to get what we need to lay the tracks, refine the plan, optimize the plan, and build the growth engine that we want. All right, that is, I'm going to pause there. Got a few more minutes on my end, so I just want to see if anyone has questions about how to use the content or anything growth related.
I appreciate you making the PDF form fillable.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, I've been looking at it as you went through that, so it's all really good.
Yeah, what you're going to notice is it's very simple, but it covers the basics. We're not trying to overwhelm or impress. If we build a plan that our brain doesn't see as practical and possible, it will shut us down every single time. We'll be like, I'll get to that later. We'll start procrastinating. We'll tell ourselves we need 2 hours to do that. We only have a half an hour right now, so we'll get to it tomorrow. And Russell, I don't know about you, but I have learned that tomorrow, or Tomorrowland, as I like to call it, is the place where 99% of our possibility lies. So our number one job with marketing, I promise you all this, at least to start, going back to my point about the trajectory, is not the quality of your content. And that's what your brain is going to say. I'm not ready for the meeting. I'm not ready to have the conversation. My blog's going to suck. Everybody's blog sucks when they start. My blog sucked when I started. Like, go back. There's videos of me from 20 years ago. Like, my God's name, is that still on the internet? Like, oh, and someone will reach out and be like, I saw that video that you did with financial planning in 20 whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, and you're still calling me? And they're like, it was great. So every single person I know that is a thought leader will tell you that their original content, because that's where you start. Now, you with ChatGPT, honestly, you guys are so far ahead of the curve because it doesn't have to be that bad to start. The point is, we have advisors who do this, and they like show examples of the first things that they did, and they're like, I can't even believe I put that out into the world. It's the putting it out into the world that creates the possibility for us to perfect the machine. Until we put it out, we simply won't. They're just ideas in our head about what we should do, will do, can't do, want to do, but don't know how. And we tell ourselves things like, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, marketing doesn't work, right? CPAs never refer. And those are the things that stuck us when it comes to driving growth. So I'm glad that you like the playbook. That was the goal, to keep it simple, easy, doable, because we know that if you can show up consistently and stack up those wins, that's what gets the flywheel going. The momentum kicks in. So one of my favorite things to do, again, you can each think about how you want to execute this, but when we're trying to get the momentum going, I'll have people in our coaching program call me every year and say, I just feel really stuck and I really want to get the pipeline going and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what to do either, but I have a plan. Do you want to hear it? So every year, every conversation, the plan is exactly the same, because it's a conversation I had with one of my first clients like 25, 30 years ago. I really am that old. I started at 15, I promise. And she called me up in a panic because her pipeline was empty. And I said, Christine, have you worked the plan? Like she had a list, right? Like a very simple 30-day, like go do these things every day, every week, every month. And she said, no, I've been busy. And I said, well, go work the plan every day consistently for 30 days. If you do not have that pipeline moving, you call me and we will solve it. I've had that conversation many, many times. Do you know how many times someone has called me back? I don't know what it is, Russell. It's crazy. If you pick up the phone and you call people consistently, some kind of magic marketing kismet happens. People call you. Here's the funny thing. Most of the time, it's not even the same people. It's not even the same people. There is something about activity that begets activity. Remember, the laws of physics apply to all things, right? A body at rest stays in rest until acted on by an equal and opposite force. If our marketing momentum is us sitting in the chair and having a moment of inspiration now and again, or reacting to something, which is how, if we're honest, a lot of marketing happens. I get this call at least once every single year. No year, joke, 30 years without fail. Russell, you might appreciate this. Stephanie, I got a call from some magazine who wants me to spend $5,000 to be in their 5-star magazine. Do you think it's a good idea? Anyone ever had that or something, right? Should I do this seminar? Should I spend on this ad? Should I do X? And every time, ladies and gentlemen, I say the same exact thing. Are you telling me that you want to grow? Yeah. Are you telling me that you're willing to invest $5,000 in growth? Yeah, if it made sense. Okay, then can we back the truck up and think about the best way to spend $5,000? If it's this seminar, blog, 5-star magazine thing, great. How many times has it been the 5-star magazine? 0. Now, I'm not saying that's not for everyone. I'm just saying when we step back and said, hey, let's actually ask ourselves the right question. So I always tell Michael in our coaching calls, which he's like, sure, if you ask better questions, you get better answers. So the question really is, how much do you want to grow and why? I know I harped on that a bit, but there's a reason. We so rarely stop and ask ourselves that question. So I was sharing with Stacy, we've got our leaders group. We've got a number of IFG, you guys, some members in our groups. And like some of them have been working on it for like 3 to 6 months. What's the vision? Who's looking like? They've got successful multi-million-dollar firms. And they're like, wow, this is hard, this vision thing. And I'm like, why would you say that? When was the last time in the last 25 years that you stopped and asked yourself, what have I built and why? Like, wait a minute, I actually hit the goals. I've done really great stuff. I'm making more money than I probably thought I ever would. I'm like, I'm doing pretty good over here. Right. And now what? If we're growing because we want to build income and a client base, often, right, we just get so hung up on like growth for growth's sake. All clients are good clients. All revenue is good revenue. Right. And you guys have a great philosophy around that, going back to our right sizing conversation. Right. But the goal, right, when we think about Portside's practice management philosophy, is to make sure that we're growing in ways that align with delivering value to clients and delivering value to you. So if we can get clear on what we're building and why we're building it, we're in a much better position to ask ourselves what aligns and what doesn't. So if we want to grow and we just want to get the momentum going, what I always say is the first hour of your day, every day, is focused on an RPA, revenue producing activity. Don't care what it is. It's not the point, right? Russ, when you come in for the first hour of the day, have a list so you cannot get distracted. What counts as an RPA? Calling people, engaging, working on the content. Like, we like to get you like, I don't want you hiding in content every day for an hour, right? So we want you doing whatever's in your like hour a day. If you do that, you will, I don't know what it is. It works every time. We call it kickstart your marketing. It's about priming your brain we're in growth mode. If you show up every day and the first hour you pick up the phone, you work on a COI email, you're building a seminar, you're working out your referral scripts, whatever it is, your brain, guess what it tunes into, Russell? It's like, I forgot. Someone forgot to tell me we changed the zip code. We are now going over here into growth land. And that activity somehow always begets activity. So in the absence of even a plan, don't tell anyone I told you, that will literally get you going. Now, that plan that I just walked you through and the playbook, way better because it's going to focus that time and energy. But the number one challenge that you all have isn't methods. It's getting the momentum going and getting the clarity and the confidence so that as you're working out the methods to build your growth engine in your machine, which is not going to be perfect, it's not always going to be sexy, it's not going to sizzle. There are going to be really boring moments where you're looking at data and you're rewriting a script. And if it were easy, everyone would do it. But here's the thing, it's not hard. It's just not easy because it requires that we get out of our conditioned thinking habits and behavior. We stop, we put time on our calendar, and we say, we're making a commitment to growth, period. Here's what that commitment looks like, period. Start small, build wins. When you start to see the momentum work, it starts to feel good. The scary goes away, or the icky, or the right, all that stuff that where I call it the invisible force field standing between us and what we know we should be doing. The antidote to that gap is action, always, every single time. So even a get up, right, start the first day with an hour of whatever fits that revenue producing activity that will get you there. If you add a good mindset and you add methods, right, the strategy, right, choose your channels, pick a simple plan, build a structure, do it, it'll be infinitely more effective. That's the accelerator effect. It's like putting that octane stuff in the car, right? That makes your car go fast. I know nothing about cars. I know there's stuff that you can buy and put in your gas tank. It's supposed to make your car goes faster. But my dad told me it's bad for your car and never to use it. Nonetheless, that's what I know about cars. So hopefully that helps, right? So Russell, love that you appreciate that structure. The reason it's as simple and as efficient as it is because we want you to fill it out and use it. If you do that, it doesn't matter if every little thing you put in the plan worked, you'll figure it out. So 70% is starting, literally starting, so that you can put out a strategy. Assume that it will not work perfectly. People are not going to fall from the sky on day one, but you get a drip, you get a trickle, right? 6 months, you'll get more, and then you'll get more. And 3 or 4 years from now, you'd be like, I'm so glad that I took the time and energy to do that. Because now, like a lot of our clients, you're going to be like, I walk up to the slot machine in Vegas, I pull the thing, and it works. Some of you are just on the front side of applying these concepts that you've heard before. You're going to hear them from me. You no doubt heard some of these concepts from Mary Kate. It's about, can you hear them enough to get out of the habit of doing what you're doing every day? Like, pick 1 or 2 key concepts that really resonate with you that you can implement and start there, right? The goal is to get the momentum flywheel going, then to lay tracks, optimize tracks, and build that growth engine out.
Perfect.
Hopefully that helped. All right, I think we're at or a little over time. Any final questions I can answer?
This has been wonderful, Stephanie. Thank you again for your commitment to us and to giving us these sessions. And we look forward to following up with you and the team on how everyone is implementing this.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Stacey. Really appreciate everyone at Portside. I hope this was a helpful session and look forward to continuing the conversation with you all.
Have fun in Florence.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.